Let's go live.
Go live. For once, we're going early for once.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mad Mamluks podcast. My name is Sim. Along with me is my co-host, Maheen. Welcome to the show, everyone. Please do us a favor and make sure you hit that old like button. Smash it down as hard as you can. And leave a comment in the comment section below with your thoughts related to the episode. Our show today is with an esteemed guest and friend of ours, Dr. Will Caldwell.
Caldwell.
That's like that, like the banker. No, that's Caldwell banker.
Caldwell banker.
No, Caldwell.
Remember Jim Caldwell used to coach the Colts when they beat after Dungy.
After Dungy.
Yeah, he coached the Colts.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
What happened to him?
He's an assistant somewhere, probably.
You come up with all kinds of results when you look up Will Caldwell on Google, because I had to do some homework before the show.
How far down was I?
Well, you weren't on the top, but when you put in Islam as a code term along with you, then you get to the right person. But yeah, there were some interesting people that share your name.
My dot was not strong enough to have other Muslim Will Caldwells out there.
Yeah.
So why do we only have two hosts today, man? Where's everybody?
Well, Sheikh Amir has COVID. Make dua for him, everyone. And we got to give a
Yeah, so Sheikh Amr didn't get his, I think, 6th booster shot or something, so that's why he got COVID. He dropped the ball there.
He dropped the ball, indeed.
I'm a scheme.
If you got the 6th, Dr. Caldwell, would you, as the doctor, would you agree with our assessment that if he got a 6th shot, he would have been fine?
Oh, yeah, well, as a doctor.
Yeah.
Which, not a medical doctor, but I think I could probably practice in like New Jersey or something if I had to. But no, my opinion is he probably would have needed the 6th and the 7th to be fully protected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah, just in case. You can't be too safe. Trying to drag me in real quick.
Right off the bat. Really eager to get the...
Yeah, so I mean, like, what do you... So I assume you've had your 8th booster by now, based upon your rationale?
Yeah, no, I'm unvaccinated completely.
What?
Indeed.
But
yeah.
you live in Chicago. How is that possible?
Well, it almost wasn't for a few months there. It was very difficult. But we just didn't go out, basically. Did nothing social out in public places for about 6 months. And came out the other end in March, and for now life is mostly normal.
Did you get pushback from family at all? Or was pretty much like, oh, this is which, because you have kids and stuff, right? Because some people will be like, well, it's okay for you to have it, like do that, but what about your kids? And you're going to spread to the kids, you're going to kill grandma and all that stuff.
I really didn't. I got almost no pushback from family. My side of the family is also unvaccinated. Okay. Which I didn't know until relatively recently. I was almost scared to ask.
Really?
But yeah, it turns out they're all unvaccinated. My wife's side of the family pretty much is, at least in her immediate family. Many of her cousins are not.
Right.
But no one was pushy. I mean, we don't really have that kind of relationship.
Well, my brain is malfunctioning here because I see a white guy who's a Muslim, and a white Muslim must be a liberal, and a liberal must, have the shots. What is going on? What's happening?
You have to say all the woke speak, and you have to say that you're against any kind of anti...
Yeah.
Well, I guess, I believe in my body, my choice. So...
That's one novel way to put it.
Right? It's not entirely novel. I think I stole that from someone. But yeah, I'm not an extreme risk-taking person,
right?
By any means. That's not where this comes from. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was reading about COVID in probably December of 2019, and I was like the only person I knew who cared about this at all. But I was like, watching videos from China, people like apparently dropping dead in the street.
Right.
And I was very, very concerned. My wife was pregnant at the time with our second son. And, you know, we were going to the hospital for regular checkups. And I was like, okay, let's wear a mask. Like, let's not take the elevator with anyone. Because I didn't know what this was. It appeared to be very serious. And there was actually I had to go home in like February of 2020 for like...
Home is in Georgia.
Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this explains it all. You're from the South.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a given. Okay, never. I see. now we have more confusion, but okay. But keep going.
But no, I had to go home, and I didn't want to fly. I was going to drive.
Okay.
My family like prevailed on me to fly. But I was the only person on a plane wearing a mask. And you know, I looked like the crazy, throughout all of this, I have looked like the crazy person to most people around me. Mm-hmm. Like I was hyper, aware of what COVID was before most people had any idea about it.
Sure.
Then as we got farther into the pandemic, I became less and less concerned about it. I was not working at Tatleaf at that time. I was an Uber driver, like full time. So, I mean, I was out every day, people in and out of my car. I had thousands of people through my car in 2020. Never contracted it that I'm aware of. I may have been asymptomatic. But, you know, what I saw was that, you know, a lot of the restrictions came as the professional class was coming back to work. And during that time where it was, you remember essential workers?
Yeah.
Right? Like I was driving all the essential workers to work. They were my business for like a good 3-month period because no one else was going out. And no one cared at all, like about masking, about like ventilation in the car, like crack your window, like keep the air flowing. Mm-hmm. There was no guidance whatsoever.
This is like April of 2020?
This was March, April, May, and then I think probably like around June, July.
Yeah.
That's when people started going back to work en masse.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's when all the restrictions came back. So from my vantage, to me, it looked like this is very much sort of like a nannying technique for the professional class. And, you know, I just saw multiple things. I was reading a lot during this time as well. I'm a researcher, like by nature, by profession. So, you know, through my own research, I became less and less concerned about it. More and more concerned about a lot of what I considered to be the draconian measures that were being taken around it. I mean, you know, one conversation I have never heard about COVID, like in Chicago and in many cities across the country, is that we effectively reestablished a form of segregation for a few months there. Like from January to March of this year, there was a medical form of segregation where like you could not go into public places like restaurants, cafes, whatever, without presenting a credential saying like, I'm this type of person, I'm fully vaccinated. Now, whether or not that was a good decision, the fact that like there was no public discussion over whether or not that was a good idea, still is like is very amazing to me that we went that far with no discussion,
kind of like unquestioned.
And there's now establishes a precedence, so you can do it over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm hopeful that I kind of get the sense that some people are just apathetic, or maybe there's some pushback that has built up, because I mean, how many boosters are you going to take before you realize, hey, this doesn't seem to be working?
Well, they say that now, the new variants, that like, oh well, it doesn't really, it goes around the vaccine and stuff like, so why are you getting boosters? Or they're saying that with Omicron that masks don't work unless you have the KN95. Mm-hmm. But most people don't have those. They're wearing the regular masks. The Omicron, like, it doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, just so many discussions weren't
Right.
had.
Yeah.
That to me, you know, as someone who has like studied propaganda at a high level,
Yep.
it looked a lot like manufacturing consent to me. So, you know, I made a lot of choices that may seem strange to people, but I think a lot of that, you know, it's a product of my background, both in terms of like my academic work, my work in the Muslim community. I mean, I have to say, one of the most shocking things to me is that given what we know as Muslims about the ability of the media to manufacture widespread opinions about any one topic, us being a prime example, right, after 9/11, that there wasn't more of a sense of like awareness or like skepticism or really even cynicism about like, oh, here they go again.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was not readily identified in a big way from what I saw.
Well, people tried to bring it up. I think they got shouted down, right? They were like, how dare you even bring this up? Like, it was such a one-way discussion that so and so said it, and they were just established an authority and just spoke from this mountaintop, or like we're the gatekeepers of this, and we're not going to have any kind of civilized discussion around this. And a lot of people exploited it, especially in the business community. People who wanted to make money off of this, they made millions. I think a lot of this was driven by companies who had identified, or individuals who had identified ways to make money off of this and drive the fear in people to get them to buy more products, whether it's sanitizing materials or anything related to the pandemic, right? That would allow people to protect themselves. People, like, I would say, like, hey, you think by walking to your car or getting into your car, you're safe from COVID? Let's say you were walked in from a store and people traditionally would sit in their cars and put hand sanitizer and stuff on there themselves. But if you actually think about it, how many things did you touch before you even put that hand sanitizer on? You probably touched your steering wheel. You probably touched the door handle, opening up the door. So in effect, when you're back in the car with your COVID hands, and you think you're safe from it, you will actually at least touch 5 different things that, assuming your hands are infected, you could easily get reinfected with after you put your alcohol hand sanitizer on your hands. So I think a lot of it is just giving people that false sense of control. Like, people want to feel like they're in control of this, even though they're not. And it's more like a public psychology thing.
Definitely.
You know?
Definitely. I mean, there were so many cracks in the official narrative around this, just about like protocols that you take for like protecting yourself, that I think it is very clear that there was an element of fear that was being promoted and used to sort of like plaster over these cracks. Like the fact that, you know, and this is my first aha moment, was, you remember at the very beginning they were saying, don't wear masks. Masks not only will not help you, they may hurt you if you attempt to wear a mask.
Yep.
And then that shifted very quickly to, no, you have to wear a mask. Now, if you were reading about what happened there, they actually, like, the Surgeon General came out and admitted, I believe it was the Surgeon General.
Yeah.
People get on Google and like fact check me, and it'll be someone else. You know,
it
someone
might have
like
been
the Surgeon
Fauci
General.
or someone.
Yeah. But, you know, they actually said, like, you know, we were worried that we were going to have a shortage of masks for medical professionals. And so we were telling people not to wear masks so that they wouldn't get bought up by the public, which, you know, that's kind of understandable. But what it established for me is, like, they are willing to lie to get the behavior that they want out of the public.
Yep.
And that they will probably continue to do this.
Yeah.
That, you know, you cannot take words at face value. You have to like look at what is the incentive of the person talking, and what are they trying to get out of the population at large. So, and, you know, like little things like go to a restaurant, like wear a mask to your table, but when you get to the table, you can take it off, and
Yeah.
then, so, you know, like
Yeah.
things like that. Just, I think for a person who may be like, you know, like those guys on that Navy ship who were like out at sea for like 3 months into the pandemic, and they had no contact, they came back. You know, I bet for one of those guys, if they were to like just walk into a restaurant and see the way that people were behaving,
Yeah.
they'd be like, well, this does not make any sense. But, you know, I think, again, like the fear was at a level. And I understand that, because I had fear when I first learned about it as well. But the fear was at a level that people were just kind of willing to accept whatever was handed to them as the safety protocols.
Yeah. If anything, like no matter what side of the fence you're on, I think at least what I gathered from it was people, it was just shocking to what extent how people can just absorb these or allow themselves to be controlled to such an extent without questioning anything. I mean, if anything, COVID has given the people or the stakeholders who have power more incentive to implement new measures of control and have additional layers or measures ready during the next issue that they want to make, or any issue that they want to utilize to further their power, you know?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, well,
you guys
For the
get-
record, I got vaxxed. I got the double shot, and I got the first booster.
yeah,
I haven't gotten anything. I haven't gotten the fourth booster. I don't know if I will or not. I'm just like, I'm too lazy.
yeah, I got the third booster, I think. Can't count. I can't remember how many boosters I have, but I'm pretty sure but again, for me, I didn't experience any symptoms or weirdness. But I heard other people did.
Yeah.
So everyone has to measure their level of risk and make a determination in that regard. But
Yeah.
we're well into, or I don't know if we're out of the pandemic, because there is a new resurgence of this new
BA5 or whatever.
BA Baracus, you know, from the A-Team. You know, you guys ever watch the A-Team?
Mr. T?
Mr. T. That was
Yeah,
his real
yeah,
name. BA Baracus. So BA5 is a new thing. Apparently hospital beds are filling up everywhere. But it's mainly getting the 85 and 90-year-old demographic. So
Yeah, I mean, that's the history with a virus. It seems like as it gets more contagious, it doesn't want to kill as many people. It just there's a proportion where the more contagious it is, the less severe, but a lot of people get it. So, you know, it's just like, yeah. I mean, people are fatigued. People are just like, man, I'm tired.
Yeah.
We're tired of it.
they don't want you to hear about it.
Yeah, you know, I'm just like, at the end of the day, I'm just like, all right, fine, just whatever. Don't bring back more mask mandates.
Yeah.
I don't know if they are. I mean, you live in the city. Is there like talk about masks coming back? You heard anything?
I haven't heard official talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I pray to God it doesn't come back. It was rough. It was just, it was, as a person who felt like often like very isolated,
Right.
like an isolated dissenter, it was a tough period.
Yeah.
You know, to feel like you're the only one seeing the reality that you're seeing. I really hope we don't have to go back to that, because
I remember, but there were some cases where you feel like it was like, you know, I don't necessarily agree with your whole position, but I see a lot of validity to it, right? And certain things you said give us a lot of food for thought. Obviously, I got the shots, right? And there's a reason I got them, but there was instances where I'd just be like, yo, this is too much, right? I remember when I was getting my hair cut, and, you know, my barber's got a cut like behind my ears. I have the mask on. It's like some barber shops let you take the mask off.
Yeah.
They would tell you to like pull it down, hold it, and then like go around the side. It's the one in Andersonville with the dog.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I was doing that for a while too.
You know, and it's just like, man, it's kind of like, yo, dude, if I got COVID, my little cloth mask right now ain't protecting you, dude. The barber. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was like, certain things are just like, all right, you have to. It seemed like a lot of things just got a little too carried away. I think the one thing that you've seen is that it instilled fear in people that hasn't gone away. There's like some kind of paranoia that's lingered. When you see the whole like, I'm wearing a mask in the car by myself, that just drives me. And I see that now, I'm like what? Like it's almost they're so used to it, they can't. I think people have almost been like, If I don't have a mask on, I feel weird.
Yeah. Well, you.
Thanks for getting enough to cancel me on right in the first, what was it, the first 10 minutes?
So you're working, or you've already completed your PhD dissertation on how Islam came to the Americas. But before we get to that, you had an interesting journey to that. And I think, at least from when you first accepted Islam, you were living in Jerusalem, as I understand it.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was like around 2007?
2006.
2006. Yeah. Okay, cool. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you came to Islam, the TLDR version, and then kind of move on into
For the full version, you got to listen to the Sultan Snickers podcast with Will Caldwell.
Yeah.
Yeah, did I go through that?
Yeah, you did.
Podcast?
So let's not repeat like content.
Sure.
There's another show for that.
Sure.
But
Give you the exclusive
yeah.
breaking news.
Yeah, but give us some fresh stuff. Like I think real quick. Yeah, you're Episcopalian, and he give us 30-second. You asked for 30-second conversion story.
Yeah, just not necessarily 30-second, but just a brief conversion story,
Sure.
and how you came to this conclusion that what you're going to study the arrival of Islam in America.
Yeah. So I came up in the Episcopal Church, was very active. My role model really growing up was the priest in my church. His name's Father Liam. And I spent a lot of time with him. I just really admired him a lot. And I think for that reason, I wanted to become a priest myself. So that was my plan. Like, well before I went to college, like I was like, this is what I want to do. Actually, at one point, I was like, I think I want to be a monk.
Wow.
But then I realized I like women way too much to ever pull that off. So, and priests in the Episcopal Church can be married. So, so I was like, yeah, I'll be a priest. So, I went to college, majored in philosophy, did a minor in Hebrew because I was friends with many seminarians. There was a seminary there at my college, and they all studied Greek. And I asked them, like, why don't any of you study Hebrew? And they said, most seminaries don't offer Hebrew. Like, Greek's the language of the New Testament, so that's what we study. I was like, cool, I'll study Hebrew in my undergrad. And that's what I did. It was modern Hebrew. There was no ancient Hebrew that I could study. But I studied modern Hebrew. And that is what took me to Jerusalem. It was like my third year of studying.
You do. Did anyone ever tell you look kind of like Jesus? Like
no.
that anglicized version of Jesus? Not the
white Jesus.
The white Jesus. You too. Look at his face. He's got the nice brown beard.
You should try growing your hair. You ever had long hair?
I haven't. No, not Jesus long. No.
Well, you've got good hair genetics. You should try it out.
Well, my hair gets curly the longer it gets.
Oh, just like Jesus. That's how the Bible describes him, right?
Is it?
I think.
It's been a few years for me since
We'll do a
I've read the
reenactment
Bible.
with him sometime. The crucifixion reenactment.
The passion narrative. With Dr.
Oh, hold on. We don't believe in the crucifixion. You can't do that to me.
That's exactly why we can do it. Because it's not haram. It's not.
Well,
if it's fiction.
Actually, it would be because you're insulting a prophet, right?
No, but we're saying he's not that because it didn't ever happen.
So you would be the other dude who was replaced.
Yeah,
Guys,
the
I
replaced
reject
guy.
the crucifixion in either case.
No, with the fake guy, dude. He got replaced. Remember?
Yeah.
That's what the story. That's how the story goes. So he'll be the fake guy.
That is actually in the gospel as well. I don't
Really?
think many people know this. Like, yeah, there's a guy in the gospels named Simon of Cyrene. And it doesn't say that he replaces Jesus on the cross, but what he does is he picks up the cross at a point during Jesus' passion where he can no longer bear the weight of it because he's been whipped, he's been beaten. So he picks up the cross and carries it for Jesus. And I believe in some of like the non-canonical gospels, Simon of Cyrene is identified as the person who gets crucified. So, I mean, that little...
Is that Barnabas book? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, the Gospel of Barnabas that we have today is not the original.
Yeah,
it's
that was
considered to be a forgery.
Yeah.
But there is believed to have been a Gospel of Barnabas at some point, although we don't know what it is.
So
or what
it's
it
one of those
says.
other gospels that
It's
aren't.
considered to be pretty weak, though, right? if we're gonna criticize, like I've heard.
The one we have right now is definitely a forgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But even from a dating point of view, right? I've heard that like if Muslims, because like Muslim apologists will critique the four gospels and then try to use the gospel of Barnabas as some kind of delil. And then it's like, that's kind of nonsensical because the gospel of Barnabas is still weaker than the four gospels from a purely historical point of view.
100%.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, you know, Gaddafi claimed that they had the real gospel of Barnabas in the Vatican archives.
Okay.
And sometimes he would call upon the Pope to release it to the public because he was convinced that it would make the case for Jesus' Tawheed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know Gaddafi even cared that much about it.
I didn't either. I thought he just cared about like bling and clothes.
Yeah, bling, clothes, women,
interesting guy?
female bodyguards.
Gaddafi was an interesting guy. I heard a story. Sorry, I'm
Go ahead.
I'm going way off.
That's
my
fine. That's fine.
Story, but like, you know, Gaddafi once when he was in Italy, he hired like a harem of prostitutes and had them up to his room, and they all get there. And he just gives them dawah for like an hour, and then on their way out, like he hands each one a copy of the Quran, and that's it. That's all he did with them.
What the heck?
Yeah, yeah.
Weird dude.
Rahimahullah.
No, I don't know.
We gotta say that, right? He's dead. He's the most like he died upon Islam, right?
Well, I don't know.
He's like,
because he had like things that he wanted to modify related to the Quran and so.
Was takfir made of him? I think the appearance.
I don't. Those are the two things I know about Gaddafi. So
Yeah.
Sounds Muslim to me. If we're gonna give Michael Jackson a pass,
It's more. I think Mort knows a lot about it. He tried to make his own version of the Quran. I don't know how successful he was with that, but or wanted to change some wording around. I can't remember exactly, but it's not. He's not in the clear. Let's just say. But yeah, back to your story.
back to my story.
So you were in Jerusalem?
I was in Jerusalem, and so I guess the foreground to Jerusalem is that there was a lot of what we would call innovation going on in my church at the time, which I didn't have particularly bad feelings about until I noticed that it crept into the creed. So there was a thing called the Nicene Creed. It's like the Christian version of the Shahada, although it's like a page and a half long. It's much more detailed than like our creed. But up on the altar, I noticed that priests started to like interpolate or like entirely replace certain words in the Nicene Creed. And to me, that seemed like a step too far, especially because it's like there wasn't conversation that was had with anyone in the congregation about whether you wanted to like have because you're saying it together, like the priests are leading you and saying this together. And you know, like you're sitting there like God Father Almighty, and the priest says God the Almighty Father Mother, and you're like, wait, like, am I supposed to say this along with you? Like, is this optional? Is this a demand? So, and if you want to know the full version of like how I think all that happened, please tune into Maheen's podcast. So there's your plug.
SultansandSneakers.com.
Yeah.
Does that work? Is that actually the...
That is a website, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So anyway, that sent me on my own journey of like, really, like I felt liberated in a sense. It was like, if the priests can get up there and basically decide to me what looks like on the fly what it is they believe, then why can't I? And it sort of sent me into this place of radical questioning of like everything that I believed. I because I was studying Hebrew, I took a lot of Jewish studies courses at that time, and was frankly fascinated. It never really felt like, yeah, this is me, but I really enjoyed it, especially because I started to understand the Gospels a lot better. Jesus is very often, alayhi salam, commenting on points of the law that are articulated in the Old Testament, but which I never had any idea about as a Christian. I just thought, well, he's being Jesus, saying Christian stuff. You know? So anyway, that sent me on my own journey. And it's funny. There's a funny story about this. I remember I was talking to my girlfriend one night who was Jewish, and we were talking about the problems she was having with her parents because of me, because you know she's dating a non-Jew. And I remember saying, well, at least I'm not a Muslim, then it'd be like twice as bad. And I kind of laughed and I was like, that'll never happen. Like, on God, like less than a year later I was a Muslim. And it taught me never say never.
Was she still your girlfriend though?
No, not at that point. That was the death knell of our relationship.
Oh, so when you decided on studying Islam, that kind of fell off?
No,
we like romantic stories too, so
sure, yeah.
Please go ahead and expound.
So it is a romantic story. It was like I think among her group of friends, it was almost like this Romeo and Juliet story, because the only way that we could have conceivably have been together in the end was for me to convert to Judaism. And I think a lot of people thought that because we were taking our relationship so seriously, that I would definitely convert to Judaism. And, you know, I was in this place where I was exploring, and I was like, I wasn't denying anything. Like, no, that definitely couldn't happen. I was like, yeah, you know, like looking into it, you know, taking these courses, I'm studying Hebrew. But this narrative got started, like he's going to become Jewish. And so by the time that I got interested in Islam, like it felt like a certain part of my own process of discovery was like taken away from me. Yeah. Whereas like there was a story about what was going to happen, which wasn't reflecting what was going on with me. So by the time I became interested in Islam, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell my best friend. I didn't tell my parents. It came as a surprise to absolutely everyone when I said my Shahada, because that was when I told them. It was after I said my Shahada. So we were both studying abroad. She was in London and I was in Jerusalem. And I had to call her one day and be like, hey, I'm a Muslim now. Which, you know, did not, I mean, like, obviously our relationship ended. That did not go well. I have to give her props. Like, she took it surprisingly well.
Okay.
All things considered. I mean, there's a meltdown, but like, what do you expect?
But she wasn't like, so are you joining Hamas soon?
No, she was. Actually.
Oh, she did?
No, and, you know, like, getting to know, like, many Jews in college.
Yeah.
Through my studies, through my girlfriend. There was very much a narrative that, like, being Muslim equals, like, being anti-Semitic.
Hezbollah, Hamas,
being terror. Yeah, definitely. I mean, this was 2006.
Right.
It's like 5 years after 9/11. Definitely wasn't just a Jewish thing. But, yeah, so, I mean, I had a lot of questions to answer when that happened. But, yeah, I said my Shahada probably within, like, a month of getting to Jerusalem. Because I was keeping it so secret, I didn't even, like, risk going to a mosque in America and, like, being seen there, you know. Like, I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing because I wanted it to be my thing. So I waited to meet Muslims until I got to Jerusalem. And, you know, I like, it sealed the deal for me. Like, the people there, I mean, the Palestinians, you know, my theory on the Palestinians is that, like, I mean, they're such good people when you meet them, especially the children. Like, they're little adults, but somehow still children, because they have to grow up very, very fast. I kind of think it's like a sink or swim scenario. You either just fall into absolute despair or you turn into some kind of saint. And most of the people that you interact with there are there's some kind of wali.
Yeah.
I like 100%. Like that's just what I saw on the ground. So, you know, I meet these people and I'm like, yeah, I want to be Muslim. I already wanted to be Muslim, but I was like, you know, I was kind of like, well, what if they're like jerks or something? You know, it's like
we are though. Little did you know.
Well, luckily
it turned out to be bigger.
If you met them in Lombard, it'd be different.
But yeah, so I said my Shahada there. Had to make the very difficult choice of like telling my parents over the phone and letting them their imaginations go wild for like 6 months until I returned, or waiting until I returned, and then it's like 6 months after the fact. But I did the latter, and I told them when I got home. I mean, I'm still impressed with how well they took it, which, you know, wasn't great, but like they tried to listen and understand, and you know they they failed to understand many times, and like over the course of years we got to a place of understanding. But still very grateful and impressed for how they took it. But yeah, I mean that was supposed to be 5 minutes, but
No, that's enlightening because, well, at least, what was your first, what book at least that you read was of most impact other than the Quran? What made you really think about things in a much more deeper way?
So I read 2 books only. I read No God But God by Reza Aslan, which I thought was, it was okay. It was fine. And, back then, like he hadn't gone quite as wild as he has.
He didn't eat human meat back then.
Right. Yeah. He wasn't yet a cannibal. But it was that, and I read the Quran in translation.
Wow.
It could have been worse. He could have quoted Majid Nawaz's book.
Yeah, but I mean, actually,
back then?
Well, his book wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. In 2006, it wasn't around back then.
Well, Majid still had like old school beliefs too, though. He wasn't completely off his rocker.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I think my political awakening was very much in the wake of 9/11. But like it wasn't your typical like, oh, like they hate us for our freedoms type of awakening. It was like, well, they're really stretching this thing to go to Iraq. Like, like these pieces don't all add up together. So I had a very skeptical disposition towards the entire narrative on the Iraq War and the invasion of Afghanistan. I wasn't predisposed to be skeptical of Islam. And, as strange as it may sound, like it really did just look like another religious alternative to me as I was sort of like on my journey of exploration. But, even I was probably more predisposed to it because of my Christian background. I was a devout Christian. And I think the thing about reading the Quran, which like the process of reading that is what converted me. It was just this like continual act of recognition. It was like, yeah, like I already believe most of this.
Yeah.
And like the things that are new to me are actually like clarifying and broadening what I already believe. Like I had my questions about the Trinity.
Yeah.
Which no Protestant I have ever encountered to this day has had a good account of the Trinity. Yeah. It's a mystery, right? So that's the answer. It's like it's a mystery. So like I heard Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah say once, like you cannot believe in what your mind cannot conceive, and I very much think that was the problem that I was having with Trinitarianism at the time. It's like I don't actually get what it's about. Yeah. How can I believe in it? So this, I think probably in many ways I was a Unitarian by default. It certainly made sense to me. So to have this sort of like Unitarian message, preached by these prophets that I am already well acquainted with, to me, it was just like, well, yeah, this is what I believe. And I made myself a promise, like I will get through the entire Quran before I make any decisions about what I'm going to do. And I finished when I was in Jerusalem. Yeah. Like it took me, like with my studies at the time, it took me about 8 months to get through the entire thing. Were
you always a skeptical person as far as like you questioned the government during the Iraq War?
Yeah. That's just something.
Is that there's a stereotype that you're from what, Savannah, Georgia?
Yeah, that area.
You're off the island though, right?
Yeah, I'm from St. Simon's Island, which is a bit south.
So there's a stereotype about Southern Americans, especially Southern white Americans, that they're very much like they toe the line on the government as far as like being pro military, that conservative demographic, right? And they're not going to question what's going on, that kind of media, especially around wars, especially like that was a very Bush was a president, so the GOP was behind the war, and people in general a lot of people who were in the Republican, who were more conservative, were behind that, right?
Yeah.
And I would assume being that Georgia, that part of the country, is a more conservative area.
Definitely, yeah. No, and I grew up that way.
Okay.
So prior to wanting to be a priest,
Yeah.
you know, like you find someone outside your family that you want to be like, but like for many of us, at least who come from like stable households, you know, you boys want to be like their father. My dad was in the Navy, and I for a while there, like when I was very young, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be in the Navy. I'm gonna fly jets just like he did. Like it looked awesome. Like he had pictures of like the Blue Angels in his study. I was like, yeah, I joined the Navy Sea Cadets for a while there when I was in middle school. I was in Boy Scout. He was an Eagle Scout, my dad. And so I became an Eagle Scout. And if you're familiar with the Boy Scouts, there's like a lot of patriotism in the Boy Scouts. Like we do an entire flag ceremony. Like we salute, you know, it's even kind of militaristic, a lot of it. So that was very much what I came from, but I think I always had a skeptical disposition. So when I started to sniff out BS, I had like a negative reaction to that always. Like I remember when I found out Santa Claus isn't real, and I hope there's no young Christian children watching this, but the mad mom looks. But I realized Santa Claus wasn't real at about 5 or 6.
Okay.
And I was like, how does he do it? Like, how does he get to all the houses in one night? There's not enough. Like, I think I probably learned like how many people there were in the world. I was like, nah, it's impossible. So I confronted my mother. I was like, Santa Claus is fake, isn't he? And she was like, well, you know, I was like, he's fake. And, and she was like, well, yeah, Will, he's fake. I was like, you lied. Like, you lied to me. I went to Cub Scouts that week and I made an announcement that Santa Claus wasn't real, and my mom got a lot of nasty phone calls from the other members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
white folk get really upset about their Santa Claus being, you know,
You wife tells you about
exposed.
this stuff?
Yeah, she did the same thing. My wife, she's white, by the way. She went out when she was a kid, and she said Santa Claus is fake, and she told the kids and everything. And her mom got all these phone calls from other angry white moms. They don't like that.
Jihad fi sabilillah.
Preserving the more important things among white people.
The fitra, you know, well, you're basically corrupting these kids' fitra, right? From the get-go, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get it. Like, do I get it? Yeah, I get it. But I think in a way, it makes people comfortable with untruth. And I think that really stuck me in a way that maybe it doesn't like feel painful to everyone, but I felt lied to.
But I bet though, yeah, you know, if I'm a parent and I've got, you know, we both have young kids, right? Like, how would it feel to have your kid, like a 5-year-old, be like, you lied to me? Like, that's very direct.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like, oh, you know, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, and I still have that in me. Like we visit my family for Christmas.
Yeah.
Super awkward. I mean, my wife and I have conversations every single year about how we're going to navigate Christmas. And, you know, I have nephews and nieces now. And, you know, I see my son getting into it, who's now like 6 years old. And I think it was probably when he was about 4. I saw him getting into it and I was like, I'm going to stop this right now. I just pulled him aside. I was like, Idris, Santa Claus is fake, but you can't tell John, his cousin.
Yeah.
And I was like, you promise me you won't say anything to John. And he promised, and he didn't. Mashallah, he hasn't said a word to John. But like, I was like, even now, I'm not gonna like abide this.
Yeah.
I mean, I have ulterior motives. Like, I don't want my son to, you know, identify with this Christian holiday. I want him to identify with our holidays. But
Are there stuff from Christianity that you? It's not that Islam is incomplete. We obviously know Islam is a complete religion, but is there any like quality or tradition that you feel like there was more of among Muslims, or maybe you kind of still feel some kind of affinity towards
definitely
Christianity?
Definitely, yeah. And even though I never identified with like evangelical Christianity, like the Episcopal Church is somewhat out of place down south, because it's like the Catholic Church. Like you walk in and you might be convinced you're in a Catholic church. I never identified with the evangelicals, but what I like about them still to this day is how much they love Jesus. Like they have a lot of, I mean, yeah, they believe he's God, but you know, we believe he's a prophet. They have a lot of love for their prophet.
Yeah.
I think that is something that we could all learn
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Because with that love, I mean, as imperfect as they are, and I've got my criticisms of evangelical Christians, believe me, but as imperfect as they are, they consciously try to emulate him. Like it's at the forefront of their minds, like all the time. Like it really guides their actions in a way that is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there's just, you know, there's these sort of like folk religion sayings, you know, just some of like the more like general religious culture of America that I still really identify with.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for me to hear gospel music and not have some part of my soul stirred,
Really?
you know, like, you know, Amazing Grace, like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. You know,
Amazing
like,
Grace hits everyone though, man.
And it-
Amazing
yeah.
Grace is such a powerful song. Like, I know, like
And it
people
doesn't
who
have a
are like
specific
like
theology to it.
long beards are like, oh man, that's such a pretty song.
Yeah,
You know? Well,
yeah.
but yeah, those are some powerful songs though.
Yeah, I mean, I love that stuff. And, you know, in terms of my relationship with where I come from more generally, like, I really love where I'm from. Like, I love the fact that I got to grow up in the South, that, you know, there were certain experiences that were afforded to me that you don't get in other parts of the country. Like, hunting was a big part of growing up for me. Being connected to the countryside. Both my parents came from the country. You know, that is something that I certainly miss a lot now living in Chicago. Is like I feel like there's a certain part of my experience that just isn't getting validated in an urban jungle,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's so. You ended up joining Tatleaf at a certain point after you became a Muslim and you went through some religious studies.
I was going to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, I was disappointed. I thought your best thing about, I've always thought the best part about being Christian was those Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
Because like our Eid gifts are, I think, are lit. I remember Ramon in 6th grade came back from Christmas. I was like, came back like 10 video games, a new Nintendo, you know,
Man.
starter jacket.
I made a Christmas list, bro. I was straight out of Medina, bro. I was one of my first assignments when I was in kindergarten,
Yeah.
Or first grade, was to make a Christmas or Santa's Christmas list, you know.
Yeah.
And I genuinely thought this guy was real, so I put everything I wanted,
Should have called me. I would have helped you out
and
with that.
nothing arrived. And I was so sad because I thought like all the other kids got it and I didn't. But yeah,
We've got to compete, honestly. Like I really believe that. And it kind of sucks because Christmas is like really commercialized. I really think a lot of the soul of Christmas has been sucked out of it because it's so materialistic now. But the fact is like if you have kids, they're looking at their Christian friends getting a ton of gifts on Christmas.
yeah,
So it's like you got to step up. We're trying our best like with the Eid, and we're trying to sell it to our kids as like you get 2 of these a year. Like you get 2 Christmases basically, and we try to go all out as much
And
as we can.
it's unique for you because I know your kids go to Islamic schools, right?
Yeah, well, my youngest isn't in school yet.
Okay, but then it's the whole you have Christian family, so they're seeing their
they see it
cousins
up close in person.
getting like hooked up,
Yeah.
right? So it's very
Well, it's not just that; they get hooked up too.
on Eid on
No,
Christmas.
On Christmas, no. My mom comes through with gifts for them
And-
at the same level as her Christian grandchildren.
those are
And-
some lucky kids, man.
Lucky kid, dude, that is stressing me out. Yeah, and she saw it. I think maybe last year she was like, well, you know, like Idris was asking, I forget what he asked her, but she was like, he was asking me something that like, I didn't know how to answer. I didn't want to say the wrong thing, so I told him to just come ask you. And I really appreciated that, but I was like, yeah, like this proximity to Christmas is like really it's setting up a standard that like I feel like I have no way but like to compete with it.
Oh, what am I wanting about? I just had a baby with a white lady,
Mashallah, congratulations.
my first one. So just last week, alhamdulillah, we had a baby Noah. Noah for her family, no for our family, for the people who can speak Arabic or have the ability to say no. So yeah, he's going to be getting presents from grandma too.
We'll commiserate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Christmas present. So
That's a great choice of a name, by the way.
yeah,
Because the hardest thing is picking a name. Like if you have in-laws like that,
Yeah.
or like parents like that, in my case, is like picking a name that they can actually say.
exactly.
Yeah, it's Idris is borderline.
Yeah,
But,
what's the Christian prophet for Idris?
They say that it's Enoch,
Oh,
but we're not going to call him Enoch.
yeah, they might
people are
think
going to look at us
it's
strange.
eunuch or something. That sounds too similar.
That could set some bad intentions. Yeah. But then we have Ismail, which is
Ishmael.
Yeah, that's very intuitive for them. But I like this. I like naming children after prophets.
Yeah,
This is another like sort of like generally like American thing. Like you read literature from like the 16th, 17th centuries in America. People had these names. They had prophetic names.
That's exactly what I did with my other son. Zechariah is my other son.
Yeah, mashallah. That was on our short list for Idris. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
But you know, they had to come through with the Malikis for Idris. You know, I have a coworker. I think I don't know what her religion is. She's not Muslim, but her husband is Muslim and Moroccan, right? And I remember when I found this out like last year, I got so excited. I was like, in my head, I'm like, when you converting? But anyways, they just had a baby, and I was like, I wonder if this kid's name is Idris, because like he's Moroccan, it's got to be Idris. He's like, that's I think she said Melik.
Mm-hmm.
But it may is Malik, I don't know. But I was like, all right, that's kind of on point,
Yeah.
on brand for being Maghrebi.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's a huge name over there.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
don't find it too much over
Yeah.
here.
Sorry. So did you start? You've been you came to Chicago to study at Northwestern, and I guess for your PhD, and your entire, I guess most PhD students, they go into a program because they have a question they're trying to answer, right? Mm-hmm. Was it like that for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I did a master's at NYU on the same topic before this. But I say my Shahada, it's my first semester of my senior year of college. I come back, do my last semester in Atlanta, wrap it up. Then, like my career trajectory is gone. I'm not going to be a priest anymore, obviously. And I'm just kind of like looking for something to do. And I had such a good experience in Jerusalem that, and like, it was so quick coming back and being a Muslim for like 6 months in America. Like I didn't make a lot of connections at my MSA. I didn't really get to see like the masajid in Atlanta. So I was like, well, I'm just going back overseas. And so I moved to Egypt and moved to Syria and stayed there for much longer. But I had this idea, which I think, is a very common idea, which is that like all the Islam is like over there, overseas. So it came as like a great surprise to me when I learned that there were actually Muslims who had been enslaved in my hometown where I grew up. They're African Muslims. They were enslaved, brought to America. And there's actually an entire family of Muslims that lived both on the island that I grew up on, St. Simon's, and the island just to the north called Sapelo Island.
Where is this? Which coast is this off of?
The coast of Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. That area, they say because of the prevalence of indigo farming, which West Africans were very specialized in. So, and West Africans from the areas that were predominantly Muslim, you got a higher concentration of African Muslims in the Southeast than you did in other areas because they were just proficient at cultivating indigo. But that was, that was one of those moments of like epiphany for me. I was like, oh, there has been Islam like right here in my backyard this entire time. And I felt this like immediate sense of like identification with these Muslims. And I just wanted to know more about them. So I said, well, not going to be a priest, obviously. Much of being a priest was like, teaching, and I was like, I'll go to grad school. I'll become a professor. And so I did, with this question in mind of like, what is that history? And that got the ball rolling for me. I think, it evolved in many ways over the course of my studies. I ended up getting really fascinated with a group called the Moorish Science Temple.
Moorish?
The Moorish Science Temple.
Okay.
They were like a pre-runner to the Nation of Islam. Okay. So like the nation gets off the ground in about 1931. The Moors were active in the 1920s. Okay. But what was fascinating to me is that they were comprised of mostly Southern migrants to the Northeast and Midwest. Their congregations were. So there seemed to be some connection, some appeal that this sort of like new, innovative, Islamic-like religion had to what very well may have been like the descendants of these African Muslims who were enslaved in the South. And nothing had been written on what that actual history was. There was stuff written on the Moorish Science Temple. A lot of it was frankly like very dismissive of them. Well, it's just, like they're making stuff up, like they're just pulling it out of thin air. And it seemed to me like, no, there's a larger story here. So I very much wanted to find out, what is the backstory to the Moorish Science Temple? Where does it come from? Because if you understand where it comes from, you understand where the entirety of what is called the Black Muslim movement comes from. And you get much of an explanation for the history of Islam in the 20th century in the United States. So that was very much like the focus of my studies. And, we can go any direction with this.
So
that
like,
you want, but
understand, like, just to clarify, Moorish Science Temple is considered a heterodox group, right?
Yeah, like their Aqidah is not ours, right? But they have so many elements of Islam, many of which, like they're exotified, they're taken out of context, but they're there. Mm-hmm. And, I think if you're looking at this as a historian, it's like, well, why Islam and not something else? Yeah. Like if the narrative is that you're just going to make something up, why choose Islam?
And how they even know about that?
How do you know about it? Why is it important to you?
Right.
And why, over and above anything else that you could choose to be, why would you choose that?
Okay.
And that was a question that had not even been brought up.
Interesting.
So that was something I was like, well, there's a story here. And there was. There was a profound story there. And that formed the topic of my dissertation.
What's your, is there TLDR conclusion?
The TLDR is that, well, the reason no one had found like the roots of the Moorish Science Temple is because they were all looking in America. And if you want to know where it comes from, you have to look internationally. You have to look at what was going on like across the Atlantic during the 19th century. Noble Jur Ali, who is the founder of the Moorish Science Temple, he says very explicitly in his writings that I am like the modern day Jesus, and my forerunner, like my John the Baptist, was Marcus Garvey, who founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And this was like a big like back to Africa movement. And so really it was like, well, here's the answer. He's saying like, he basically says like, I got Islam from Marcus Garvey. So he points directly at him, and I'm like, okay, well, there's a good place to start. And as it turns out, the UNIA, which was an international organization that had roots in West Africa, had roots in the UK, that very much was the hotbed of Islam, out of which these so-called Black Muslim groups came. And the UNIA was, it had a lot of Muslims in it, but even amongst the non-Muslims in the UNIA, there was a sense that Islam very much was a religion that was going to be the platform of the political mobilization of African people across the world.
Wow. Yeah. So apparently W.D. Muhammad drew inspiration from this Moorish temple, and
Farad?
Yeah.
Farad Muhammad?
Yeah.
W.D. Fard.
Yeah.
Sorry, wait, Wallace Forth, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Wallace.
Yeah.
He was the original founder of the NOI.
Yes. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was. There's some, I mean, it's still very much a mystery who he was, but there's some suggestion that you'll find in old documents that he was a member of the Moorish Science Temple.
Yeah.
And that may have been like a later claim, like made it a much later date to sort of like claim fraud for the Moorish Science Temple. But like there's so many stories that circulate, and that's one of them.
But in terms of at least Islam coming to America, there's so many different things out there, infographics and stuff that people claim. What is, at least from an academic perspective, the most established agreement in terms of the earliest presence of Muslims that came to America?
We know for sure that they were here at the same time as Columbus.
Really?
There are Spanish royal edicts from like the 1500s. Time after time after time, they had to reissue these edicts saying you cannot allow Moors into the Americas because they had just fought the Reconquista and won.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going overseas. We're going to establish like this new Spanish kingdom in the Americas. We're not going to fight the same battle that we fought for centuries here in Iberia again in the Americas. So do not let Moors into the Americas. Like, don't take them on your ships. If you get caught doing this, there are going to be like increasingly harsh penalties. And it's very clear from these edicts that like the Muslims just kept coming. And some people say that's because of Muslim skills in like navigating the sea. I'm not entirely sure why they continued to bring Moors into the Americas, but we know that it happened. And so they're right there from the time of Columbus. And what's really interesting is one of those edicts actually mentions like that their worst case scenario seems to be coming to fruition, at least a little bit, because it talks about tribes of Native Americans converting to Islam. And he's like, you get the native population converted to Islam, and the situation will get out of control. So the edicts got really harsh in terms of the punishments that were mentioned for taking Muslims to the Americas.
This is Isabella, right? I can't remember.
This is
Ferdinand Isabella. They were the king and queen of Spain, right?
It was after their time.
Okay.
Because I think this probably went on for some time before they really realized it was a problem.
Probably like 100 years or so?
No, not even that long.
Okay.
It was, I want to say it was definitely in the first quarter of the 16th century.
Okay.
The 1500s.
Sure.
Yeah.
So would you say, going back to Marcus Garvey, where does he trace his Islamic influence? Like, you found a place in Africa where he gets that?
Not in Africa. Marcus Garvey worked, before he became who he was, and the leader of the UNIA, he worked for a Muslim at a newspaper in London called the African Times and Orient Review. And that guy's name was Duse Muhammad Ali. Excuse me.
Caucasian or African?
He was African.
Okay.
There's a lot of speculation on where exactly he came from. He claimed to be Egyptian and have a Sudanese mother and an Egyptian father. Some people claim that he was African American and was just kind of putting on the show. But in any case, Marcus Garvey worked at his newspaper for a time. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long. I mean, it wasn't like there was a profound like mentorship relationship that was there. In fact, I believe Garvey left on bad terms. But he, I think, definitely through that experience saw that Islam was, it was providing an organizing principle to a disparate group of people, because the office of that newspaper hosted Muslims from all around the world. I mean, it's London. It's like the imperial center of the world at this time. And so you have Muslims coming from Africa, from India, from the Near East, and they're all mixing in this place and, making political plans. Like Dusay Muhammad Ali ran guns to the Libyans during their war with Italy. And so like Garvey probably saw like, they're making moves here.
And what year? This is during the time of the Ottomans still, right?
Yeah, the Ottomans were still around. They were on
Okay.
their last leg. This is around like 1910 to 1915.
Okay.
And what Dusay Muhammad Ali and many of the people around him, I think if you want to talk about like a sort of a theoretical understanding of like what they were doing, it came from a book called Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race that was written by a man named Edward Blyden. And really through Dusay Muhammad Ali and then through Garvey, this book, which basically argued that Islam is the natural religion of the black man, which is exactly what you later hear Elijah Muhammad claiming. It's the natural religion of the black man. It is the salvation, like the political salvation of African people across the world. And that became, I think probably today we would call that a meme. Like it became such a strong meme that it was like common knowledge by the time you get to the UNIA.
Is that book available for today?
Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's around. And that's a fascinating story that I write about as well, like how he wrote that book and how he came to his conclusions about Islam, because Blyden was a Christian. In fact, he was a Presbyterian minister, but he saw Islam as being more powerful and more politically advantageous for Africans than Christianity could ever be. And
Sure.
that's the thesis of his book. So that idea became very mainstream within these circles. And out of those circles came the Moorish Science Temple, the Nation of Islam.
Okay. So yeah, that sounds like. I didn't realize I think when you first hear about the PhD story, the thesis, you're like, seems like a basic surface level.
So here's the thing. At least for me, whenever I hear about Muslims talking about the origins of Islam, it's my own fault. I'm not criticizing anyone. I just think that it's like an attempt to make Muslims part of the fabric of America and say that, hey, we have a claim on Americans just as much as Native Americans or any other type of ethnicity would. And it seems like such a futile attempt to make it, because of the historical record, at least from my own surface level reading on this stuff, was that it was weak and people are just kind of searching for some validation. It's not necessarily that it's inaccurate. It's just the feeling that, why do Muslims really want this validation that, oh, we have a stake in America, our fabric, or our Muslim brethren, we're also part of this? And because it just seems a little in confidence.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
That is how that history very often gets used. And it's, I mean, it's low-hanging fruit. I guess I get it, but it's also incredibly superficial. And at the end of the day, integrationist in a way that actual history has never been. Like the politics that we see through that history, and there have been other Muslims in the Americas. Like I don't want to say that this is all of Islamic history in the Americas, but this is a certain strand. But even this strand of history gets used in this sort of like integrationist way, where like we need to stake our claim, like you said, and we're going to use this history to do it. Well, those Muslims were never seeking to be a part of the political or civilizational mainstream of the Americas. So that, if you want to get technical, like it doesn't quite fit. What I think is far more interesting that this history offers us is like, it's so long. It's like 400 years old. And, there's nothing new under the sun, ultimately, as the book of Proverbs says. Like, all of the political possibilities that we could possibly seek to engage in right now have been tried by Muslims in the Americas. We ought to be looking at our history from that vantage point. Like, what can we actually learn about what the limitations of engagement as Muslims in the political mainstream will be if we attempt it right now? Let's look at history and find out what has worked better and what has worked worse in the past. You can look at that history and find out. I think this is where the value is.
Yeah.
But again, like the history itself is not that well known about. And so for that reason, it's certainly not used in this way.
It seems like you're onto something there, but what do you have a thesis on our political engagement strategy based upon that history?
Yeah, I did when I completed my dissertation. The political landscape in America has changed so radically, even in that it's been 5 years since I graduated. It's changed so much that I wonder if the answers that I came to back then are even relevant anymore. But I think a very interesting strand that I have not completely let go of is Muslims very much had a sense of the inherent antagonism between themselves and the hegemonic civilization in Americas. In fact, one of the arguments that I make in my dissertation is that the discovery of the Americas came in the midst of a crusade. That's how Columbus understood himself. Why was he trying to get to the Indies? It wasn't just for like the wealth. Like, yeah, he wanted the money. He writes in his own diaries, I want to get to the Indies, capture that economy, use the resources of the Indies to mount an attack on Jerusalem from the east, where crusaders can then come in from the west and we will hit it from both sides and we will finally retake Jerusalem for Christendom. That's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's why, in the Americas, like I said, with all these edicts, there's this real sense of like stress and like anxiety about the presence of Muslims. It's like, we don't quite know where we are. We might be in the Indies. We might be in a new place. But in any case, Muslims are going to mess up our plans.
Yeah.
No matter what. So,
speaking of, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No, go
but
ahead.
I came across a story about the Islam in Brazil where there was the Mali revolt, where there were a bunch of Muslim slaves who had banded together to overthrow the establishment.
In Bahia.
In Bahia, yeah. Did you remember anything? It was an interesting story because one of the wives of the slaves ends up disclosing the details of the coup to her masters, and because she thinks that her husband's going to get killed in the revolt, so she ends up foiling the revolt, and it ends up getting crushed without them having any effect. But it ends up creating a ripple effect throughout Brazil that ended up leading to the abolishment of slavery.
Yeah.
At least from whatever I read.
And that revolt was almost definitely inspired by the jihad of Osman Dan Fodio in West Africa.
That's amazing.
Like news of that had come, and sort of like a lot of the Africans who became slaves in Brazil, they came from that part of West Africa.
Wow.
So that they were intimately familiar that like there was this establishment of a Muslim political power in West Africa. And this is where I probably reached the most in my dissertation. But I think we can probably start to talk about some form of African Islamic civilization that spanned the Atlantic, because we know that there was communication between West Africa and a lot of these enslaved Muslims in the Americas, and that through this communication, whether it's coming through people or actual writings, which we have examples of, there was almost like this political consensus that was emerging, which was an anomaly in West Africa. Jihad was not the way that Islam historically spread in Africa until about the 18th century. And then jihad became the big way that Islam spread in West Africa. That there was almost like this militant African form of Islam that spread across the Atlantic, that seems to characterize, if you want to call it like maybe a civilization.
Yeah.
They certainly didn't have like political hegemony. It wasn't a civilization in that sense, but there was a political unity that existed that I think we can probably suss out there. And so the title of my dissertation was The Fugitive Islamicate, Islamic it being like the Islamic civilization
Right.
that is not hegemonic, but it sort of like lives in, fugitive is like a theoretical term that I kind of regret using, but it's over now. But it's not the dominant civilization, but it is a form of civilization that seems to have existed across the Atlantic.
That's awesome.
So that was the political possibility. And I'm not saying jihad is our political possibility in the present. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is like there is a sense of like inherent antagonism. Like we'll never be part of the mainstream in this country because, well, we just haven't since the beginning. And the historical results of attempting to integrate into that political mainstream have again and again been detrimental.
Yeah.
Like the Muslims either get absorbed and lose their religion, or they get diverted in terms of like reaching their own goals. The only thing that has really been viable, where you have a transmission of Islam from one generation to the next, has been sort of, in like 20th century parlance, it would be segregation.
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna do our own. Like we're not gonna try to get a seat at your table. We're gonna have our own table.
Yeah.
We're gonna build our own political power. That's exactly what the nation was doing.
Yeah.
This was their political program. It was nation building.
What do you think about that, though? Do you think that is
I think there's a lot to it.
I think so as well, because this is something I've been talking about with our listeners for a while now. Because if you look at history and the way civilizations or people that are living under Muslim, whether it was Muslim rule or vice versa, there is a tendency for the minority populations to be absorbed into the wider ideology of the nation. Mm-hmm. Whereas just like Judaism and Christianity went through in this country, there'll be an abandonment of values of faith of where Islam will end up just being more of a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. And this is widely discussed right now anyway among intelligent people in many circles. They talk about the cultural Muslim being accepted.
Yep.
And so fundamentally, and you go back to the controversial issues, whether how Muslims should deal with issues related to LGBT or abortion and things like that, you have a fundamental, at least from a political perspective, you have a fundamental branch or bifurcation of strategy between a certain group of Muslims who want to engage with the wider America, and then there's another one where that's just wants to segregate, say, hey, let them do their own thing. If they want to engage with us, we'll engage with them, but we need to close in and become more insular. Mm-hmm. and protect our families and our values from competing ideas.
Well, I think it also, it just makes good sense. And I think it could probably be articulated in very different terms after what we experienced in 2020. Like Jeff Bezos got richer by almost the exact same dollar amount that Americans collectively got poor in the year 2020. Because we were all staying at home, ordering stuff off of Amazon.
Yep.
They own Whole Foods now. We even got our groceries from Amazon. That type of like nation building, which as the nation called it, the Nation of Islam, it gets called localism in other contexts. But it's simply, supporting people that you are actually close to, right? Why send your money to someone that you don't know, much less a billionaire halfway across the country, when you can just go to the Muslim meat market down the store and buy your ribeye from someone that you do know and someone that you can build a relationship with, someone maybe that you can trade services for groceries if inflation gets too bad. This is, I think, becoming more and more pertinent by different means than I certainly ever expected. But I think in any time, in any political climate, this is probably just generally a good idea to engage in, this type of nation building. And I think it requires a certain sense of who we are as a people, right? And I think that's one of the things that Islam gave to a lot of African Americans, is it was it named them. It's this is who you are. Your original religion is Islam, and it actually did create a nation within a nation.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that we're losing with the cultural Muslim phenomenon. Like, I mean, it's like you said, it's not anything special.
Yeah.
I think the description of America as a melting pot is very accurate,
Yeah.
because you lose your form eventually.
Yeah. So
Right.
I think you mentioned a cultural Muslim. I think it's a good segue into like the work you do with Tatleaf. So people,
Because we're cultural Muslims.
well, no, this is what I'll say. So as a disclaimer, people who watch the show should know I support Tatleaf not just by attendance, but it's one of the very few organizations I consistently I'll donate to. I just put it out there because I believe in the mission of Tatleaf.
Thank you.
And the work they do. And since the times of Osama Cannon, rahimahullah, to today, right? Because I've always saw it as this place. It was if I ever had like a coworker who was not a Muslim and they had any kind of inkling towards Islam, I would take them to Tatleaf, right, over any other space. Sorry, is before that was Convert Connection to CCC, which evolved into Tatleaf in Chicago, and now Tatleaf, I think, in Chicago is the bigger presence, right, in the Bay. That's what it seems like, at least.
No, yeah, definitely.
But the purpose of what I understood Osama's vision was it was a place for new Muslims to come in and grow and be nurtured, right? But one of the questions, the critiques that I think people have about Tatleaf, and I don't know how fair this is, but I want to get your take on it. And something I noticed as well is that it's a space for new Muslims to come in and incubate. But it also gives like a lot of these like suburban yuppie type Muslims a place to just come out and just chill and like not grow. Are you understand what I'm saying? And kind of just perpetuate this cultural Muslimness identity, and they're not learning the damn thing. And they just think it's, come in there and like, come into events and meeting people is fine. And there's not a push for any kind of further growth. That's a perception people have. As someone who's a frequent attendee of Tatleaf, I don't think it's unwarranted personally. But I just want to get your take on that a little bit.
Well, I think that, although I may disagree with the characterization of probably the same element that you're referring to,
right?
Whatever you want to call it, that's present.
Yeah.
Although I would say to anyone who has that perception
Yeah.
and has maybe stayed away for that reason,
Right.
Come join us sometime. I think probably you will see a lot more diversity in terms of who actually shows up than you might expect. Because I'm not unfamiliar with like this perception that people have. We used to hear it much more than we do, but we know that the perception is still out there.
And the thing is, it first brought to my attention. I was blind to it. I know a convert actually told me. She told me, she was like, we feel like it's being hijacked by the immigrants. Now this is before you guys under your current regime, but this is before when you were still like in the last maybe 4 years ago or so, right? So there was like, hey, it's been it's for these yuppies who are like working on like investment banks and consultants, who are coming here to like meet spouses. That's what it became. That's what a convert told me, and they're like, the mission of Osama was being hijacked.
Well, I think in terms of the history of Tatleaf, I get where that sentiment comes from, because like you said, in Chicago, the organization that became Tatleaf Chicago was an explicitly convert space.
Right.
It was just for converts.
Yep.
And it was very much meant to be like that incubator where we could sort of like grow without, dealing with misperceptions or pressures that, we tended to experience at some masajid. But Tatleaf was never convert specific. In fact, I just wrote an article about this because we've had a difficult time at Tatleaf in naming what it is we actually do. And I think the reason for that is like convert care has been very central to Tatleaf, but it's never been the whole story. But I think because of the importance that we've always placed on it, it has colored everything at Tatleaf. But it was never intended to be a convert-specific space.
Okay.
So and I think this is a good thing. There's a point at which you have to get out of your silo. You have to be able to navigate the wider Muslim community.
Right.
And yeah, there were young Muslim professionals coming through to our spaces. But I think that this is a necessary step in developing a fully fledged community. I mean, the fact is, we're also like in the middle of the city.
Right.
So like, who do you expect to show up? Right? Like it's going to be young Muslim professional. That's who lives in the city.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's other people, but like, I think what we don't get credit for at Tatleaf, what we probably never got enough credit for, is that like Osama, back when he was steering the ship, he very much came to Chicago through Iman.
Right.
And that was a relationship that he maintained until he died.
Right.
Right. He would go down to
Iman is the inner city.
the Inner City Muslim Action Network,
Yeah.
which is down on the south side. He would teach classes there.
I remember those classes. Yeah.
Yeah, like with the reentry program. So
Right.
like the brothers who were coming out of prison, and these guys are predominantly African American. And Osama always dedicated a time whenever he would come to Chicago to sit with them.
Yep.
Because of that, those guys very often came through to Tatleaf. Like if you've been coming to Tatleaf for like any period of time, you will have noticed that there are guys from Iman there,
Right.
and they're majority African American.
Yep.
So like Tatleaf, there's a diversity there that I think we sometimes don't get credit for, and that relationship stands. Like it remains. Like with Uncle Rafi Peterson, we're continuing to engage with him on his own reentry program, which is he's doing now. He did green reentry through Iman originally. Now he's doing his own
Wait,
thing.
what's his green reentry? What's his reentry programs?
It's taking mostly guys who said their shahada in prison,
Okay.
and basically giving them a home when they get out of prison to ease their transition back into society.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I remember we had the guests who talked about the green reentry programs.
Jamali.
Yeah, Jamali.
Yeah.
Jamali.
Yeah,
he-
yeah.
Yeah. Because he's one of the the team leaders. He has some position within the Green Reentry program, right? I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what his title is, but yeah.
Yeah.
There's this je ne sais quoi or undefinable quality among the greater Muslim world that you feel like is missing, not just from converts but from also just Muslims who have kind of integrated really well into the American society. They don't really understand that feeling of passion towards faith or sensitivities, things that we take seriously. It's hard to describe that level of love. Can sometimes be misconstrued as oversensitivity, but there's these mix of emotions or a spirit that captures a global Muslim audience that they all share. And sometimes I feel like it's missing among particularly the American young Muslims. They don't necessarily capture unless they are watching Islamic content on YouTube or something. But do you feel this? How in terms of as an education director? I know you're trying to get other Muslims involved who are born Muslims as well, and it's not necessarily that Tatleaf is close to that, but you also want the new Muslims to understand these various elements of just Muslim culture. It's not necessarily part of the religion, but it's more of a cultural thing that all Muslims kind of share. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Definitely. Yeah. And I'll say like one of the big reasons that I love Tatleaf, I've decided to work full time at Tatleaf, is I think it's one of the few institutions in America that I've experienced personally where you find that and it's actually alive. I actually like, I disagree that it's sort of like this sort of like holding or I don't know how you want to put it, but it's like a space for people who just want to stagnate. Everyone I know at Tatleaf is on a profound journey of their own. I think oftentimes in their outward appearance, in their outward like affectation, they may come off because they're coming out of a place where they have been apathetic, they have been stagnating. But the reason they come through our doors in the first place is because they find something there that either reawakens some sort of love for Allah and His Messenger within them, or they have that reawakened somewhere else, and they find Tatleaf to be a community where that love can be expressed.
Yeah.
But I do think that they have like the outward trappings of these people, and they get pegged that way very often.
One of the examples, and I know, and this is something I raised with Sidi Umer Hasib, who's I guess what's Umer's position at Tatleaf? He's
the director of religious affairs.
Right? Because if you look at your programming, right, you've got your the class with Ubaydullah on Tuesday nights, which is like it's kind of like Living Right, or is it a little different?
Yeah, it's very similar. It's with a different text.
Cause it's on, and then your class is Being Muslim, which again, and I really enjoyed your class. I sat on it once. It's like for people who are brand new.
Yeah.
Right. And I always tell people, if like I was talking to some uncles in the community, like Bengali uncles, like, because they want to do some work with y'all, and I was like, that's the class y'all should go to. That's the event they should go to. I think to get an idea. As someone who's like completely knows nothing about Tatleaf, go to the Being Muslim class, right?
But what surprises a lot of people about Being Muslim is that throughout the majority of the years that we have taught it, which is probably like close to 10 now, the majority of people in that class are not converts.
Okay.
You have people who, again, have this sort of reawakening, whether it's at Tatleaf or somewhere else, and they have this drive to re-engage with their religion.
Right.
And that class has been the landing pad for that demographic as well. In fact, we've gone through times where it's been like 1 or 2 converts, and then the rest of the people were born into Islam, but for whatever reason, they have felt the need to like re-engage, and this is one of the ways that they're doing it.
Right. I would say that there's I think the one time I went, I think there was a handful of converts to the one I went to, and I think what stood out to me was like I didn't see those people at some of the other programming, right? Like for example, a brand new convert might not understand the Qasida Burda.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That might be like what's this? You know what I'm saying? It's like, but and I've been to Ubayd's class a couple times, right? But I guess it came up with Umer is that I remember there was an attendee at Tatleaf who posted something about like on Facebook that like kind of indicated that there was some questionable understanding of Aqidah about the final prophet of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
What?
Yeah. And so I asked Umer about it.
About his finality as a prophet.
Yeah. It was about another. It was regarding. I'll give you the example. There was a the show Rami, right? Mahershala Ali is an actor in season 2. He's the sheikh, and he does a recitation, and we know in real life it's a Qadiani.
Yeah.
So there was this thing on Facebook about like, his and there was a statement made that like, it's just a different version of Islam. They're still Muslims, right?
Of a statement from someone at Tatleaf?
Not on the board, but like a student who was in like, attending Umer's like durus, right?
Oh, okay.
So I asked Umer about it, like, hey, like what's going on? What are you teaching your people, right? He's like, are you not clarifying? It's like basic, like the finality of the prophet, right? And he's like, yeah, man, but sometimes these people just don't come to the, classes, right? But then they sometimes get the mic, and then we kind of let them, this is a couple years ago, right? Because Rami season 2 was from a couple years ago. But I was like, maybe you guys need to like shore some things up, because I think the vibe that, and again, you mentioned that I don't know, because you guys are the ones doing the work behind the scenes with a lot of the attendees, right? And that's where you're probably coming from, that perspective of that growth. But I guess when I see the course, I think that you got the Being Muslim class, the basics. You got your Qasida Burda night, which I think is an important part to introduce, like, there's that spiritual element there, right? But I'm like, where is like the Fardul Ain? Like the fiqh, you know what I'm saying? That kind of like teaching where...
Well, it's in Being Muslim.
It's okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, it's right. That's the main thing that we teach.
Okay,
in Being Muslim.
so within like then inherently you would learn about things, because right now we live in a day and age when cultural it's rampant more amongst immigrant Muslims, to be honest. There's all kinds of wokeism has taken over. Everyone's paradigm has shifted, so you have issues where you have people saying absurd things like, if I see a white man in Jannah, I'm gonna leave. Right?
I saw that.
You know what I'm saying? These kind of, there's this entire thing of like, or if a white person becomes a Muslim, that they first needs to also, with their shahada, they should also need to read a primer on white supremacy. Right? You know, these kind of things. And I'm like, where do you get this from? And I'm like,
well, I guarantee you they're not getting it from Tatleaf.
no, I know you're. I know they're not. I know you're not teaching that. But I'm saying like, but can we counteract that through Tatleaf, the work Tatleaf is doing? Is what I'm saying.
Maybe, you know, I was listening to the Imam Mark Manley episode on my way here.
Okay.
And I'm not a regular listener, I'm sorry to say.
Hey,
but like
you're never supposed to admit that.
Well, look, I work this stuff. You know, when it comes to like my free time, I don't want to think about
I'm sure.
the goings on in the Muslim community. But you know, he made a point about what happens on social media, and I'm a voice at Tatleaf, which is like very much like, hey, let's disengage from social media.
Okay.
Because I'm not on it. Like, you won't find me. You may find a Twitter profile, but you'll notice I haven't tweeted in like 8 years or something.
Right. Yeah.
But I think so much of what happens online, it just like, you don't see it. Like, if you're not online, like, and your interaction with the Muslim community is actually in person in a place like Tatleaf, like, you're just gonna miss 99% of the nonsense. So like, can Tatleaf fix this? Like, no, probably not, because the internet has a life of its own. But do we need to, for people to have a healthy experience of community at Tatleaf? Like, no, because that stuff doesn't really enter our space in the first place. I don't think so, anyway.
Right.
And I'm in close contact with a lot of the people that we serve. And I've never really felt the need to address the relationship between like saying your Shahada and confronting white supremacy.
Yeah.
For example. It just hasn't come up as like a pressing issue that's on someone's mind. The stuff that people come to us with are stuff that they sort of live and grapple with in the physical world on a day-to-day basis. Like, I haven't got much about internet arguments.
Okay. I'm disappointed to hear that. You're not feeling my pain, Will.
Well,
I think you should stop feeling your pain too and just get off of social media. It's actually really nice.
how do you feel about, would you, in terms of your non-Muslim family, white non-Muslim family, would you be more comfortable bringing them to a Tatleaf gathering or a mosque?
Yeah, I have taken my mom to Tatleaf.
Yeah.
I've attempted to take her to the local mosque, which is like an hour away down home where they live. I pray Juma in Savannah. I've attempted to take her there, but she hasn't wanted to go. But I mean, I will say, like, most masajid, I probably would not take her to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't blame you.
Because I feel like obviously like a profound sense of responsibility for whatever may happen at any given masjid.
Yeah.
And I just can't control that.
How do you feel about one of our friends? His name is Robert Dufour, who's trying to create a space for white Muslims, specifically white American Muslims, in the West or in America or Canada, who is trying to create this place where you could bring your non-Muslim family, and they can see that, hey, you're not going into a place where you're a completely different looking from everyone else, you know, and they could feel more comfortable. And like, do you think that
the parents could feel comfortable, or the converts?
I mean,
themselves?
the converts themselves too, right? There's definitely a culture there that's different from many of the ethnic Muslim cultures that have migrated to America. But many there's black mosques, there's Indian mosques, there's every ethnicity type of mosque. Do you think, I mean, I know it sounds weird, at least in terms of how the woke culture would see it as, in terms of a white mosque. It's not necessarily that it's saying whites only mosque, but it's mainly a cultural center, similar to what many Turks have in Chicago. Well, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, look, I believe in the freedom of association. If if there is as much of a felt need for that among a large enough group of people that an organization like that could actually get off the ground, then yeah, Bismillah. I mean, I hope I never hear about a white only mosque where it's like you're Daisy and you show up and they close the door on you. That would be something that would trouble me. But you know, I would say two things about that. That I could see that being really, really valuable for the parents in this scenario. It would. There's so many questions that go through the mind of a parent who, whether you're white or whatever, if your child converts to Islam, I mean, it's better now, but like, especially like when I said my Shahada, like 2006, you had you couldn't even tell your parents what you actually wanted to tell them because of like the random questions that they had. Like my dad came to me like months after I told him I was Muslim. And you guys remember this guy, Adam Qadan?
Yeah.
He asked me, because Adam Qadan, who was a white convert, he released this statement on the internet saying like the West better convert to Islam or there's going to be more bombings. And my dad was like, this is why you did it, wasn't it? He was like, you know, you don't have to be scared. And I was like, Dad, I didn't convert because of Adam Qadan. But like, you know, the craziest things that like I would have never thought of like occur to.
He's probably doing that for months.
He like if I could have looked at his internet browsing history during this time, like I would have found a bunch of crazy questions.
Yeah.
But like that would be incredibly comforting for parents.
Yeah.
Just to see like other young people who look like their children practicing Islam, it would be like, okay, maybe they're going to be all right.
Yeah.
I think children ought to want to take care of their parents to that degree. And if that's what they feel like they got to do to take care of them, now I don't think it necessarily is, but if that's what they feel like they got to do, Bismillah, go for it. But I would say, you know, like for the sake of like having your own space as a white Muslim, I hope you get past that eventually. Like, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but I hope you get past that eventually, because I hope you get a conception of what is your own that includes all Muslims, rather than just like, I hope you actually have a sense of identity with other Muslims, because like this is the same problem that you see from like the quote unquote like woke crowd. It's like I'll leave Jannah if I see a white person there. It's like we're really bad at making the distinction between friends and enemies. Like we have to have a sense of who our friends are, and as a Muslim, my baseline assumption is that any other Muslim is my friend, that we have a shared set of interests and we have a shared love for Allah and His Messenger, that I don't want to live in a world where I'm segregated from those people. No, I feel like more and more than ever, I need to be with those people. So, you know, I'm not going to tell anyone not to do it, but like, I hope it's a step in your process.
Yeah. Hidden gem out there. If there's any Dawah people, I think Utah is a great place to do some Dawah.
Would you be willing to like flesh this idea out with Robert on his channel on a Zoom call?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
We'll make it happen.
Absolutely.
But let's get back to. I think
I want to just real quick. I have seen spaces organically emerge.
Yeah.
Where like a group of white Muslims get together and you see them click, and it's like they build this sense of companionship for no other reason than like their life experiences are very similar.
Right.
And it really, I've seen it put them at ease in a way that clearly was new for them since saying their Shahada.
Yeah.
Now, I've also seen them, you know, not use that as a crutch over the years. Like you grow, right? But that's beautiful. And, you know, just as like the other side of the coin of what I was just saying, like, why shouldn't they have that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm much more comfortable with that emerging organically than like you go create your own white mosque.
Yeah.
But if you feel like that's what you got to do, you know, like why shouldn't you have that same sense of comfort? And why shouldn't other Muslims want that comfort for their brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
would be my question.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things like, because how many Muslims do you engage with at Tatleaf who will be like, hey, Will, like, when's the last time somebody asked you Tatleaf is like, hey, Will, when are we going hunting? Deer season's coming up. You
Actually,
down?
you know what? More often than you might imagine.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an emerging group of hunters, Muslim hunters in Chicago.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I still haven't gone with them, but yeah, I would. I mean, I don't know if this is like an interesting thing to talk about, but I see that as a cultural shift that is indicative of larger trends, like a drift away from the left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I was gonna do you think that the other hang up that people have about Tatleaf, and maybe you guys just learned it, if I were in your shoes, I would just like be like, all right, it is what it is, learn to deal with it. Tatleaf is a very tasawwuf oriented organization, I think. It's fair to say.
I mean, we read the Qasida Borda every
Right.
Thursday, so
Right.
yeah.
Has there ever been and then so people who come from like Salafi orientations would be like, nah, and my take has always been like, well, at some point, I think some people would criticize that, but I'm like, you're criticizing based upon your ideology, right? And I don't think it's a valid criticism. It's like that's like a Barelwi criticizing a Deobandi mosque. I'm like, yeah, of course you're not going to go there, right? Is that your same outlook with that kind of stuff? Is like when people ideologically like, yeah, we just don't vibe with it. I mean, there's no beef, but it's like, well, it's not.
Yeah, definitely.
We can't cater to everybody.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there are many groups that we don't vibe with necessarily, but we do have an understanding.
Right.
And one of the things that I was not a part of, but did take place when Tatleaf came to Chicago, Osama Cannon went around to all of the major masajid and basically asked for permission to do dawah in Chicago. And he got it. And it was just, I think, a basic sign of respect that I think in many ways people might be surprised to find that we have with other communities. Like we have a mutual feeling of camaraderie and respect with Deobandis in Chicago. To some extent with Salafis as well. There's a Salafi organization that operates very close to where we are in Pilsen. And we have a lot of overlap in terms of like who comes through to our spaces.
Sure.
There's ways in which like we just, they're not coming to the borda, right?
Right.
And we don't expect them to. But they come through for a lot of other stuff. And I think that's beautiful. Like that's the way it ought to be.
Right.
Like let's just build where we can build and agree to disagree where we have to disagree.
And like you said, organically, if you have enough Tatleaf people who want to start their own Salafi chapter, Bismillah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Like I said,
Marhaban.
Salt Lake City. That's where the most disillusioned white people are from various sects of the Church of Latter-day Saints that have kind of amassed. And I think
Is that because polygamy is legal there too? It's like,
polygamy is legal there too. Well, I don't know.
Utah's such a nice place though, man.
It is beautiful.
I was just out there with my family.
No
Really?
kidding.
Yeah, we went to Zion National Park.
Okay.
I've always want to go there.
Dude, go. We went to the Grand Canyon too.
Okay.
Zion was better.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you fly to Salt Lake City?
No, so we had the choice between Salt Lake and Las Vegas.
Okay.
We flew into Las Vegas. I was telling my wife, like, you chose degeneracy over piety. Like, we could have been with the Mormons.
Yeah.
Instead, like, I'm like covering my kids' eyes as like we drive down the strip and there's like these billboards. I mean, I actually I'd never been to Las Vegas. I appreciated seeing it.
Yeah.
That's
I've only
exactly
been
what I expected, though.
in their airport. Is just you got slot machines in the airports. It's
Yeah.
Is
insane.
Vegas itself like a nice like scenic area? Like in the
No.
It's the middle of the desert.
is it really?
Yeah.
It's just dead. So it's not like mountainous or hilly, none of that stuff.
There's some mountains in the
Okay, so
distance,
it's not
but-
like Salt Lake City at all then.
No,
Not
no,
that
and
type.
it's like desert mountains. It's like
got you.
rocks baking in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did the trip. We actually took the Amtrak from Chicago to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
That's something you should do once.
I've never been. I would love to check it out. My wife has been. She says it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, because you take the train, you don't have to worry about driving, and you can you can go through the Rocky Mountains and stuff. And then
How many hours was that?
Oh shoot, we left here like at 2:00 in the afternoon and arrived in Salt Lake City like 11 p.m. the next day. So what is that? 9 plus 24, 33 hours.
Ooh.
Yeah, 33 hours
trek.
on the train. But you get to sleep on the train. I fall asleep and then did the 4.5 hour drive up to Yellowstone. the Wyoming side.
Nice.
So we didn't do Zion. I think my brother's been to Zion because he used to live in Arizona. So
Yeah.
Cool.
all right, any last thoughts for Will Sim?
No, Will, thank you so much for joining. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. If anyone's interested in Tatleaf, how do they contact you guys, or where do they go?
Tatleafcollective.org. If you want to come to any of our events, we have an events page with the calendar. All of our events are live streamed, so you can find the Zoom link there. If you are new to Islam or interested in Islam and you want to reach out to us, we have a contact form on the website.
I'll be giving out Mike Swice's personal phone number right now. Hold up, let me pull it up.
Yeah.
Actually, Mike said
630.
Mike said he will come on the show if Sim comes to a bird tonight.
Oh,
Are you up for the deal? Is that a deal?
absolutely.
Mike
I can
hasn't
do
been
more
on
than
before?
that.
What? Mike's been on before a long time ago. Sim wants him back.
Okay.
He was back early 2016, like three, four
okay.
studios ago, before YouTube.
Okay.
You know, he was like episode like 20 or something.
Yeah.
And you're episode like 275.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, we'll get him back.
But like, Mike has conditions. So Mike, all he asks is Sim attend the bird at night at
Mike
Tatleaf.
Swice is like my older brother. He says something, I'm doing it. That's it.
He's you're older than him.
No, he's older than me.
No, you're not. No, he's not even 40 yet, dude.
Shut up.
Yeah. He just looks because I go like gray hair from serving these converts.
All right, now I can boss him around then.
Yeah.
It's not
I was
like
wondering
I'm
why
a
you
big-
call him big bro. I'm like, Mike is younger than us. He's in his 30s still.
He's just a silver fox.
Yeah.
Silver Fox. All right. Well, folks, make sure you hit the old like button and comment in the comment section below with your thoughts related to the show. Otherwise, we'll see you all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
So I'm like.